Welcome to Experts on Expert. I'm Dr. Dax Shepard. I'm joined with surgeon Monica Padman.
I wish. In another life.
Why? Why do you wish that?
I just think it'd be cool, like on
To
Grey's
tell
Anatomy.
people? Oh, okay. I had a friend who dated 3 surgeons in a row in Michigan.
Wow.
And his conclusion was that they were hornier.
Really?
Isn't that interesting?
Huh. I wonder why.
I don't know. He said they were real raunchy in a fun way. Maybe just because they're dealing with the nuts and bolts of humanity.
Maybe it's like life is too precious.
You should just
fuck.
Well, what a great transition to our guest today. We have an incredibly smart and interesting sex addiction therapist, sex therapist, and marriage and family therapist named Dr. Alexandra Katehakis. I had so much fun talking to her.
Me too. She was fascinating. I liked her a lot.
I just love talking to her, and she has a great book called Mirror of Intimacy. So this is a great opportunity to perv out with us, with an expert that actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So please enjoy Dr. Alexandra Katehakis. Ooh, one more thing, Monica.
Yeah?
If you like watching me on TV, I know
Which
you're
I do.
You do? Okay, great.
Of course I do.
I'm on tonight. I am the host of a game show.
Oh, I love games.
Called Spin the Wheel on Fox tonight after MasterChef. It's so exciting. You can win $23 million.
How come you didn't invite me on there?
Because you're not good enough of a person. Nor am I. The people that are on this show have like rescued people out of derailed trains. For real.
Oh, yikes. Okay.
Yeah, so never was I standing across somebody that I was even remotely as good as.
Okay.
But it's a very high-stakes, fun game show, and then I am a little bit weird on it, as you would hope. I'm talking to the contestants about how handsome their husbands are, what their workout routines are. You know, that's what you'd come to expect.
Sure.
Just a dose of perviness. If you want to check it out, it's on tonight, Fox after MasterChef.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Will you pronounce your last name for me?
It's Katehakis.
Katehakis.
It's sort of phonetic.
Katehakis.
Right.
Where's that from?
It's Greek.
I would imagine, are you proud of that?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a time, like when I was in elementary school, where I hated it.
Uh-huh.
Right, because I grew up in a very white area.
Of where?
Well, I grew up on the central east coast of Florida, and there's an Air Force base there.
Okay.
So it was like very white, middle class.
Waspy.
Like white people.
Mm-hmm.
And I have really curly hair. When I blow dry it, it's straight.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I look like Tiny Tim. That dates me, obviously. But so I hated my ethnicity.
Were mom and dad Greek?
Well, my mother was born of Greek parents in the States, and my father was right off the boat. He was an immigrant.
Oh.
My parents have a really interesting story in that my father came right out of World War II as a young man, and he couldn't make a living on his island. He grew up in Crete. So he decided to join the Merchant Marines and travel around the world and make some money and go back, was his idea. But when he got to New York, he called his uncle who lived in Miami, who said, "Why don't you come visit us?" And so my father had, change in his pocket, essentially, spoke no English, got on a Greyhound bus and made his way through segregated South, eating cheese and crackers and coffee for hours, and had this experience of like getting off the bus in Georgia and going to the bathroom, and there were black and white bathrooms.
Sure.
So he was an alien, really. So when he got to Miami, by then he had, broken all rules of curfew. He was now in trouble.
He was AWOL?
That's exactly.
Yeah.
His aunt and uncle were very good friends with my maternal grandmother, and my mother had married very young and had a child, and then her husband divorced her, and then he died. He had cancer, so he knew he was dying.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because that could either be an incredibly benevolent gesture or a very weirdly selfish gesture.
Right. And so my father comes along and my grandmother says, you should marry him because, you don't have any options.
Sure.
And she does. So he can get his green card and stay in the country.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, though, in the 30s and 40s, marriages were very much financial arrangements in ways, right?
Sure.
So this wasn't too
A different
crazy.
kind of arrangement, yeah.
Yeah, both people benefited. Now, did they fall in love?
Well, I think it was more unilateral. I think my mother was crazy about him because he was Greek and gorgeous and all of that. And my father was young and handsome and no way ready to settle down. So
Right.
it was rocky, but they were together for like 25 years. And that's how I ended up there also. And there were a bunch of Greeks there that were in construction, flooring, mechanics.
Yeah, what's the Greek stereotype? I know Italians are bricklayers. They were in my Detroit suburb.
Well, they're usually restaurateurs, but my father wasn't. He did a whole bunch of different things.
Oh.
But he ended up building and establishing a flooring company that my brother now runs today.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. It's very hard for a family-owned business to survive a generation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, the reason I ask all that stuff is because we get to talk to a lot of people, and I'm always interested in why they chose the field or were pulled towards the field that they ultimately went towards.
Right.
And I was just curious if you yourself knew why you were drawn to
Sexuality.
human sexuality. Yeah.
Well, I had a very circuitous route, as most people do.
Uh-huh.
And so, I grew up in this family where there was a lot of tension and there was infidelity. My
Sure.
mother made that very vocal to all of us because she was so unhappy. And so I didn't have a compass or any kind of role model for what it meant to be in a healthy sexual relationship over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up on the backside of the sexual revolution and had a lot of sexual experiences that really didn't lead me much of anywhere other than heartbroken mostly.
Uh-huh.
So at some point, I started to ask the question of, well, first of all, what am I doing with my life? And that's
Sure.
when I considered going back to graduate school. The question really was, how do people have a long-term committed relationship that remains erotic over a lifetime? And is that even possible?
Right. Now, really quick, were you equally judgmental of mom and dad, or did you put your judgment on one or the other? Were you forgiving of dad and thought mom should have left him, or did you think dad was a dog? And
No, I don't think I was really judgmental of either one of them in that way.
Oh, that's
because
interesting.
The ways in which she was vocal, it wasn't explicit, but she was angry and
Yeah.
something was up. And I really adored my father, loved him deeply.
clearly, if he was having many affairs, he was probably a charismatic, charming
Oh, yeah,
gentleman.
for sure.
Sure, yeah.
Handsome, sexy,
Yeah.
continental, the whole 9 yards.
There's a terrible Chris Rock joke that's really funny is that men are only as faithful as their options. If you've ever heard that routine.
No, but-
I would imagine he probably had a lot of options.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And he was also seeking them, I'm sure.
Right.
And he got married and he didn't fall in love the traditional
That's
way.
right. Right.
Yeah.
And, my father passed away last year, but as he aged, in his later years, he told me that he was homesick for a very long time. He never intended to leave Greece. There was a woman there that was, his girlfriend. He always thought he was going to marry her and return home.
wow.
So he was really torn
Yeah.
between these two worlds. And so he was not satisfied or happy for, most of his life, I would think, where that was concerned.
Wow. Okay, so at a certain point, the many roads lead you to getting a doctorate degree in human sexuality, and you're also a licensed psychotherapist.
Yeah, I'm a marriage family therapist.
Do we know what percentage of people who stay monogamous are sexually active?
Well, I think increasingly what we're seeing is that Americans overreport their sex lives
Sure.
and are actually having less sex than ever before.
Uh-huh.
Even young people, right?
Yes.
I've read that too. Yeah.
Yeah, especially there's a researcher in San Diego who's really on the forefront of all of this. Her last name is Twenji, and she looks at really the 20 cohort college and in the 20s. And everybody's been so freaked out about all this sexting and texting and young people having so much sex. It turns out they're having much less sex than ever before. Solo sex and virtual sex. Like nobody goes steady anymore as
Right.
a teen.
Really?
No. I mean, that's so uncool.
Really?
Yeah, it's much more of a hookup culture, or it's all through virtual conversation.
Wow.
Wow. I would imagine males here would still list sex as a number one priority.
Yeah, but they're probably using a lot more porn than having sex. So it's more of a solo sex trend that's taking place. And I don't know how familiar you are with the latest generation of vibrators, for example.
I own all of them.
You do?
So
Okay.
yeah, you don't have to tell me.
So
No,
they're all
I don't.
okay. Well, there was a time when vibrators were all this kind of hard plastic, flesh-colored plastic thing. They're like really unattractive. And
Yeah.
now they're made in all these like gorgeous colors. They look like lipsticks.
I know. I have one
right?
that's lavender.
Right. They're made out of beautiful materials that don't cause cancer. And they all have USB ports. So they'll plug right into your computer if you want to recharge them so that you no longer need batteries and have to deal with that whole mess. So that becomes an extension of the computer, and that people are having more and more sex by way of porn or camming through these devices. And we're wiring up our brains and our sexual arousal template towards these boxes.
Well, and I can only imagine that they're going to only get more and more interactive.
Sure, yeah,
in
with
that.
VR.
Sure, and if
Yeah.
the vibrator already has a USB port, then clearly it could be linked and synced up to some kind of imagery that would change its pulse and all these things as the images change. Like that can't be far away if
It's
it doesn't
not.
already
I mean, we
exist.
already have robotic sex dolls now, and they're really AI. They're being made, and especially the female dolls are just, let's say, not your father's blow-up doll,
Right.
right? You can have them designed any way you want.
And there are even molds of famous porn stars and stuff that people can get, right?
Yeah, you can get just about anything you want now. I mean, there's even a company called WeVibe that has a remote so that if you are with a partner, and let's say you're in London and I'm in LA, you can use this vibrator and one person can actually adjust the stimulation of it and
Over Wi-Fi.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
My wife and I are living in the Stone Age, I guess. We're not doing any of this exciting stuff. Well, let's start with a really just general question. Let me tell you. So I'm addicted to most anything I enjoy. So the topic of sex addiction has come up on here numerous times, and I generally defend the concept. I think some people have an issue with it. I think generally people in the public feel like it's an excuse as opposed to an explanation. So how do you feel about how the public views sex addiction?
Well, I think when people say it's an excuse, there's a profound lack of compassion in that statement.
For sure.
People go right to being angry. And we have a culture in this country where we love to watch people rise to the top and then we love to watch them crash and burn.
Yeah.
But it's a very bizarre kind of sadistic relationship we have with celebrity, especially.
Yep.
And so there's no place for compassion or this idea even of redemption, that people can redeem themselves, that they can make restitution. And then it's through this, and I'm sounding so biblical right now, and I'm not, but through this dark night of the soul that we recover ourselves. And so I think that, sex addiction has been sort of in the zeitgeist now as a constellation of behaviors as we know it. And the argument between the sexologist and the sex addiction therapist, the sexologists say you can't be addicted to a behavior. And the sex addiction people are saying, well, it's not the behavior, it's the neurochemical adaptation in the brain and in the nervous system that keeps driving these repeated behaviors that lead people to destroying their lives.
The drug you're taking isn't actually eliciting the sensation that you're experiencing. The drug you're taking generally is unlocking dopamine, serotonin, all these things that are already in your brain.
right.
You have the chemistry set in your brain, and then the drug is, if it's cocaine, it's a 3-time inhibitor, so you're going to have a flood of all these different things that's hard to get. But so it's already your body's chemistry that's producing the euphoria and the experience, right? So there's no reason to say that some kind of behavior wouldn't act in the exact same way. And as someone who has used sex to regulate my own feelings and emotions, I can tell you I have been high as hell off of that. So that's crazy to think that the behavior is not producing a reward system response just like a drug would.
Right, and it does. And people speak about it repeatedly, and that's where tolerance comes into play, because looking at one person having sex is not that novel anymore. So then you need 2, 3, 10 Martians, you name it, in the mix.
Well, like drug addiction, right? It
Yes.
continues to escalate.
Right.
It has a pretty predictable trajectory.
Sure. And then there's a tolerance to the escalation. So there's always a seeking of more and different. And that's what has their lives, derailing.
American Psychological Association does
Right.
not recognize it, does it? As a
It does not, but there's an international coding book called the ICD-11 that's coming out, and they do recognize, and they are recognizing sexual compulsivity in the newest edition of that book, which is coming out in the next couple of years. And that's a big boon for the field of sex addiction, because that means people will get insurance reimbursement and help in treating the problem.
Right. Now, what is the history of it? When's the first time people even suggest that you could be a sex addict?
It was in the 80s. There was a researcher in the UK named James Orford that started talking about sexual compulsivity. And then John Money, who was at Johns Hopkins University in the United States, started looking at paraphilias. So people that were engaging in aberrant sexual behaviors like exhibitionism and voyeurism, and saw that people could be addicted to those behaviors. So when Patrick Carnes came along in 1983 and wrote Out of the Shadows, it was previously called The Sex Addiction, he looked at Money's work and said, well, what if we looked at compulsive sexual behaviors that were non-paraphilic? Just people that had this problem with being addicted to these sex behaviors that were problematic, that weren't offending behaviors. And so that's when he really brought the term sex addiction to the foreground. Of course, he was attacked heartily during that time as being homophobic, sex negative. Those were the primary accusations.
Well, it is a tricky topic. I find a pattern that emerges quite often in this country in particular is there is this puritanical bedrock that does hijack many things. I'll see it in feminism. Like there's like a clear feminist argument, and then all of a sudden it gets hijacked by this secret puritanical desire we all have.
Like what? Can you give an example of that?
Yeah. So we had a live show. Monica was talking to one of our guests, Thomas Middleditch.
Oh,
He's
yes.
talking to Thomas Middleditch. She started talking about her breasts being big. And then Thomas said, oh my God, I'm just excited now because we're on this topic. And Monica jokingly said, well, I'm here to please. Well, we then got a bunch of tweets from fans saying, this takes us backwards 100 years, blah, 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 blah. And I kept pointing out, I think what you'd like to say is that you would feel uncomfortable in that situation, which is totally fair. It's not fair for you to tell Monica she should feel uncomfortable in that situation. Or if she wants to instigate that, she should be free to do that.
Right.
Always feel like there's just an undercurrent. It's just waiting to pop up and pull everyone back into the very puritanical bedrock that is America. When I hear parents so reluctant to talk to their kids about how you shouldn't see any penis besides dad's.
Right.
That's a very hard conversation for people to have, which boggles me.
Right.
Because
everybody has one.
yeah, it's not a big deal.
Exactly.
It's not awkward for them. It's
Sure.
awkward for you. It's
Yeah.
a stupid looking penis that
Right.
they see on dad. It looks ridiculous.
Right.
You shouldn't see anyone else's, and if you do, you should tell me.
Yeah.
And no matter what they say, you'll not be in trouble. Have that conversation. But there's a lot of, I think, shame and embarrassment around sex in
tremendously.
this country.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And even the way you were just talking about that, it's just so normalizing. It's like saying you have 2 feet or, but when the parent has shame, they're transmitting that shame to the child. And shame is the absolute bedrock. It's the cause and effect of sex addiction from my perspective. Because most people who are sex addicts grew up in unbelievably shaming families where there was some kind of abuse, whether it was neglect or emotional or physical or sexual abuse. And as such, they have a shame-based sexuality. They had to go have it in these furtive ways or difficult ways, and nobody knew about it. Nobody was stewarding that child into their sexuality. And then it becomes like a tumbleweed. It just gets bigger and bigger and more egregious, and people feel disgusting about their behaviors or what they like, and they feel like they're abnormal. I mean, it goes on and on.
It's become shame-addled because you think your horny feelings are unique and wrong.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, as opposed to they're biological and evolutionary, and it's the way the human organism is wired and how we continue the species and all of that.
Yeah, like I wish my dad had said, so hey, you're 12, now or soon you're going to get horny and you're going to masturbate, and that's how we do it.
Exactly. I think what we know from neuroscience now is that every human being is coded for pathological dissociation. So that means when you've got data coming into the central nervous system, meaning through the eyeballs, through the 5 senses, and it's too much for the organism to handle. So a 5-year-old organism, a 10-year-old, a 35-year-old, we have different capacities depending on how old we are. So you take a child who's got all this data streaming in, And the autonomic nervous system that regulates the body is geared towards what we know as fight or flight, right? So something horrible's happening. Like if there was an earthquake right now, we wouldn't sit around and talk about it. We would all just dash out the door as best we could.
Well,
So-
I wouldn't because my adrenal glands are shot, but yes, I
Okay,
would
well,
watch
we would
you
take
guys.
you.
Yeah, I would
we
definitely
would grab
see-
your hand and take you with us. But the brain is designed to move the body. So we'd be
Yes.
in a high flee state, high adrenaline, high cortisol to get ourselves out of danger. But if you have a child that's little, infant, 5, 8, you name it, and it's in a family where there is violence or alcoholism or just neglect, no food, no tending to, nothing. That little system can only take so much. And because it cannot handle what's coming at it, the cortex, the higher cortical functions uncouple from the lower part of the brain. So it's a cortical subcortical disconnect. That's what dissociation is. So the cortex goes offline, and it's the biggest operating system. It requires the most oxygen. It's the slowest. That's why when you're on a plane, they say put the oxygen mask on first, then put
Sure.
it on the child.
Also, at certain heart rates, right, that frontal lobe goes offline as well.
Correct,
Yeah.
right. And it's different for everybody. So during 9/11, there was a group in Boston that looked at the faces of people that were running during 9/11, and they tried to discern who was going to have PTSD and who wouldn't. And they could tell
Wow.
by the face, by the social engagement system, who was online and who was offline.
Interesting. And the folks that were online were not going to have PTSD?
That's right, yeah.
Because they were able, to process all that information
The
in real
cortex,
time?
yeah, they could process it. They could remind themselves to breathe. They could probably use some positive self-talk to help down-regulate the high arousal state they were in.
Yeah.
And so each one of us are different. If we look at the four of us here right now, if that earthquake happened, depending on how regulated we were as infants and what kind of abuse we suffered will depend on whether or not we would go offline or not. So that depends again on how securely attached you are, meaning how regulated you are.
So maybe this would be counterintuitive, but I fancy myself someone who does very well in high stress, shit's going wrong
Right.
situations. My personal theory had always been, oh, well, I've seen so much violence growing up and I lived through it that each time it got kind of successively less impactful, or I had lived through it. So it was like, oh, this is happening again. But is that counterintuitive?
Well,
or
it
what
may be-
should have happened? Or-
That's a couple things there. One is it could be that your tendency is more towards avoidance. So you start to overregulate instead of someone who's underregulated who freaks out in the face of that. So your system's quietly going down, but you look chill and like you got it all together. That's my case.
It is.
Actually, yeah, you want therapists that are kind of more on the avoidance spectrum than on the hyper aroused spectrum.
Right. Well, and surgeons.
Of course, also.
Oh my God, he's bleeding.
That's right.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
So we don't want that. So it could be that you're desensitized to it. It could be that you're able to regulate your heart during that, or that your system starts to really go down and you are slightly, let's say, moderately dissociated in the face of that kind of trauma. That's what has you able to handle it.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I wonder evolutionarily, again, I'm going to get into big stereotypes. There's a lot of, I'll be incorrect about a big section of the population. Let me just stipulate that. But for 140,000 years, we were hunting and gathering. The male pursuit of hunting was such that you had to click into a weird mode occasionally. There's a gnarly side of hunting, let's just say that. And I wonder if evolutionarily, men disassociate more easily than females.
What you're talking about is dissociation, but let's be clear that dissociation is not always pathological. So hunting, mathematics, people that are mathematicians say the numbers sing to them. Artists, when they're painting, when you're in a flow state, and that flow state is a form of moderate dissociation, it's required in order to be creative. So the left goes offline, so you're not thinking and criticizing everything you do.
Right.
It's a bodily based right brain process that's very much emergent when we talk about these flow states or art. And it's true for athletes. Anytime you're in a groove, whether you're writing, singing, painting, you name it.
Yeah.
So dissociation is a feature of the human organism. When it's pathological, it's what a mentor of mine, Alan Shore, says, it's the escape when there's no escape. When we were talking about abused children.
Yeah.
And so it's built into the human organism to go out when it's just too dangerous and we can't handle it anymore. So those hunters, I would say yes, their focus is starting to get very narrow. They only have their eye on the target. They're not thinking about their children or their wives or the cave or anything else.
Yeah.
It's just about killing the deer.
Or the approaching warring tribal adversary.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think my best understanding of it, again, is that we are unbelievably automated creatures. Our brains are very automatic and we're adaptive. And so we will adapt our strategies towards survival. I think you can turn a child in large part into a sociopath or a saint, depending on how you raise that child. Now, of course, there are genetic predispositions and all sorts of things in the mix. But if you take a child who is sexually abused, and especially repeatedly, there's high sympathetic arousal there, and there's also shame in the mix.
How does high sympathetic arousal work?
Well, it's activation in the nervous system. So you've got high adrenaline, as I said before, high cortisol, maybe even dopamine because it's novel. There's also fear. There's a fear state on board. And there's probably a shame state, which is deeply visceral. It's in the enteric system in the gut. So the child is getting sexually aroused because that is, again, an evolutionary strategy.
Yeah.
It feels like this is dirty, bad, and wrong, and it feels good. Right? And that fusion, especially early on, pre-puberty, puberty, creates an arousal template that is very, very tenacious to get rid of. So if that child doesn't have a trusted other to go to, like a parent that says, if you see anybody's penises besides dad, you need to tell me, they can't tell the parent, and it happens repeatedly, over time, that becomes an adaptation towards this is how I have sex.
Yeah.
I look for sex that's furtive, that's humiliating, that's shaming, that where I'm treated poorly because it's arousing.
Yeah.
But it's also dirty and I feel horrible about myself.
It's so complicated. We'll get into these theoretical conversations, and I wonder how you feel about it. So my wife and I will argue about strip clubs. She'll go, rightly so. I think the majority of women in there are probably sexual abuse survivors.
Right.
And I think statistically she's correct. I'll propose, so yes, I agree. But who are we to say how someone should best deal with their trauma?
Sure.
Or if someone, for whatever reason, it's not me, I can't personally relate to it, but if that is the hand you were dealt,
Right.
and here is an occupation that you don't mind, that you actually, for some reason, are drawn to, is there a moral imperative there? Like, what if someone's trauma creates a certain type of person and they're that way? Is that ambiguous at all morally?
Yeah, I think morality is kind of a tricky conversation because you could say, like, let's say this young woman is 19, 22 years old. She doesn't know what she doesn't know.
Right.
Right? So how much of her trauma is dissociated or repressed? How intelligent is this person where they feel like something's wrong and I want to get out of this? They're not even thinking that. Do they have the capacity to get out of it? Do they want to? Or do they just not even think or would never imagine that they could do anything more than that?
I can see where someone would be a stripper and go, you're right. I do this because I was abused, but here I am and I like it, and I'd rather make money doing it this way than another way. Does it get complicated to arguing that?
I don't think so, because for me, that's when it becomes a healthy choice. It's when people don't understand why they do what they do that it's problematic. So if we take the example of BDSM, right, which has a lot of controversy around it.
BDSM?
Bondage, discipline, sadomasochism.
That's a great example.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a young woman who was terribly abused as a child. I mean, this is a real case, a female whose father was very violent. And so she ends up picking really violent guys that beat her up. And so for her, sex is hot because it's autonomic arousal when she's being humiliated and beat and hit. And so she goes through this a number of times until finally she learns about the BDSM community. And she goes to therapy and she starts to see that, wow, this is really destructive for me. It's hurting me. I hate myself because of it. And then she finds out that there's something called a pro-dom, a pro-dominator, a man that she can pay to dominate her. Only now she gets to call the shots. She gets to say, this is how hard you hit me. This is, where you hit me. This is what I like, what I don't like. And afterwards, I want you to hold me and tell me I'm a good girl and that I'm okay.
Wow, that exists?
Okay, yes, it's called aftercare in the domination BDSM world. And so over time, she works with this pro-dom who is really a form of therapy.
Yeah, like immersion therapy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she starts to have an experience, and it's not sex. He may not even have intercourse with her, but she's starting to have this experience with someone she trusts, who's not going to violate her boundaries and who takes care of her afterwards. And over time, she no longer has to choose guys that are, batterers.
Yeah.
Essentially. So now she's saying, hey,
Interesting.
I like BDSM. I like being tied up or spanked or whatever.
Right.
But I'm not leaving with black and blue marks and going to the hospital and hating myself anymore. She's like,
Right.
I know that's why I got into it. I'm no longer seeking that validation.
Yeah.
I just happen to love the sport and it's fun for me.
Yeah, and it's very easy to be kind of judgmental from the outside.
bet, yeah.
To go like, even in that case, no, you shouldn't be getting hit. As someone
Right.
who doesn't hit anyone or
Sure.
get hit, yeah, it's easy for me to draw an arbitrary line and go, no, that's not healthy. I guess, what does healthy mean?
I think it's about awareness. I really do think it's about awareness. If somebody is dissociated and they have no insight and they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, they're generally going to get hurt. And I think when we start to have awareness and we start to see, even in Alcoholics Anonymous, right, they talk about the return of choice. That you're starting to make choices. There's an intentionality like, oh, I'm going to go do that thing. And if I do it, I know there's probably going to be suffering on the other side of it. But hey, it looks like fun, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
As opposed to I do it and I keep doing it and I can't wake up in the morning and I'm hurting myself and I can't get to work or whatever.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
Now, what's really interesting, I've only been to 1 or 2 SLA meetings, and I think it's kind of fascinating. I was just explaining to someone else in AA that sobriety is a self-defined thing within SLA.
Correct. Well, with a sponsor, presumably.
Okay, but unlike AA, can't drink and claim to be sober.
Right,
It's pretty cut and
exactly.
dry, right?
Yes.
But for a lot of people that go into SLA, it may be sobriety for them is not seeing any sex workers. Another person might be no strip clubs. Another person may be no pornography. It could get tighter and tighter until some people no masturbation, right?
Right.
And so they define, is it their bottom line? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess it can't be abstinence. Like, can't be like the removal of sexual stuff because we need that. Or
But
is it for some people?
For some people, it
Yeah.
is, but it's typically time limited, like for 30,
Yeah.
60, 90 days or something.
Ah, interesting.
Well, it is one of the challenging addictions to deal with in the same way that food addiction is.
Right.
Like I am most sympathetic to people with food addictions because you have to eat 3 times a day.
Right.
Similarly, if you end up in a relationship, sex is a healthy component of any good relationship. So presumably you're going to be sexually active at some point.
Well,
so
that's the idea, right? Is for people to restore their sexuality.
yeah.
SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous, uses the same sobriety plan that Overeaters Anonymous uses. They use a circle plan.
What's the circle?
Well,
plan?
the inner circles are the behaviors that are problematic, that people don't want to engage in anymore. And it's different for everybody. I mean, there are a lot of people that are addicted to porn that never touch another person. They're really quite avoidant. And then there are the guys that, hire escorts and go for sexual massage and they look at porn, but their thing is other people.
Right.
So it depends on the person.
Sure.
Just like somebody who overeats, like you might, Monica, you might like cheese and bread. And I'm like, oh, I just like cake.
right.
So that's what goes in the inner circle is the thing that's most problematic for you. And then the middle circle defines all the triggers, all the things that lead people to sex. So you have to consider that compulsive sexual behaviors or problematic or addictive behaviors are maladaptive coping skills, right? If you grow up in a family where there's nobody there to soothe you, to tell you it's going to be okay, to say that, you're loved anyway, that child is going to find another way to take care of themselves, whether it's masturbation or looking at porn or, chasing after other people. That's like a one-trick pony. When you're a secure person, when you're a healthy person and your feelings are hurt, you call a girlfriend, right? If you're sad, you ask for a hug. If you just got a promotion at work, you call your best friend and you're like, dude, guess what happened?
Yeah.
Right? You've got lots of ways of soothing yourself interactively with other human beings. But addicts are isolated people. And so they only do this one thing. It's in secrecy. It feels dirty, and they hate themselves for it when it's not working. So that's the middle circle. And then the outer circle are all of the life-affirming, constructive behaviors that people want to move towards, like fellowship and making phone calls and being with friends and family.
Right. Again, it's so anecdotal. I've only been at 2 meetings, but it did seem to be a pretty consistent division between many of the women seem to be what is maybe referred to more as love addicts.
Right.
It's really an addiction to fantasy, isn't it?
Yeah, which is dissociative.
Okay. Explain how.
We all go into fantasy. I mean, you're driving home, right? You're thinking about something. You're imagining your weekend. You get home. You don't know how you got there.
Oh, right.
Or we all are mildly dissociating all the time.
Yes.
But fantasy is more of moderate to severe depending on the person, where you're living in a bubble, which is even language they use in SAA, where you're not really present or in reality. So you see somebody and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I wonder what it would be like to marry that person, and wonder what he's thinking and where he's going, and should I drive by his house, and I'm going to arrange to meet him. And it can get really stalkery also, because it's a one-person system. I'm having this experience in my own head, and I've never even talked to that person, or I have, and they've been kind of lukewarm, but I didn't notice it.
In that state, are people assigning emotional states to it? So, when I'm with him and we live in this house and I prepare dinner, I'm going to feel this way. And you can actually even feel that way while in the fantasy, right?
That's right, because imagination is very powerful in how we create our reality. So, yeah.
Yeah, Esther said that. Proust said, love is a product of the imagination, not the other person.
Something
like that. It was really good.
Which is really, that's love addiction, at its height.
I would not have the goal of convincing everyone listening that they're a sex addict, but I think it would be helpful because we all kind of have some barometer of what substance abuse looks like. I think sex addiction is far more closeted than alcohol addiction.
It is, yeah.
It's easier to hide, I suppose.
It is, yeah.
And you probably don't know. You're not aware that you're doing it, that you're using all these mechanisms to control your emotions.
A lot of times they're not aware until they keep hitting a wall, like they can't get into a relationship or sustain one. That's the main thing. And the thing that they're doing is no longer fun or pleasurable, or it doesn't give them the same high. It starts to feel depressing. There's despair. They can't stop doing it because they don't know what else to do. And that's because of the adaptive nature of it. You just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yes.
And you can't not do it because you don't know what else to do unless somebody intervenes on it. And that's the power of fellowship and a power of a program.
Again, without labeling things right or wrong or bad or good or this or that, what are some kind of red flags, I'd say, for people to be aware of when they're thinking about how they're pursuing people, how much fantasy is involved? Are there any guidelines for people, or is it just something they have to know that they don't feel good at the end of it?
Love addicts have a tendency to push the fantasy. That's where they go. They're not in reality about what's happening. So for the sake of argument, are you married? No. Okay. So I'm going to use her as my partner.
Please.
Okay. Instead of you.
Yeah.
So let's say Monica and I are dating. And I'm super excited, and we go out, and she's kind of aloof, and, I can't really tell whether she wants to be with me or not, but I've got this idea now that this is going to be my partner. And so she says, yeah, I'd like to get together again, and I'll call you, and she doesn't call. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm making excuses for why she doesn't call. And then she calls like days later and says, oh, my cell phone battery was gone, and, I forgot about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. So that's a viable possibility, right? And then she's supposed to pick me up, and then she's, 30 minutes late. And there are all these yellow flags along the way, and I keep making excuses for why she's the one and this is the right relationship.
Yeah.
And then I meet her friends, and they're just like awful, but I don't care because I'm so desperately want to be in a relationship with her.
Yes.
And so in a quote, normal person is going to look at these things and say, you know what, this is not going well.
not a
This person
match.
doesn't call me back. They don't do what they say they're going to do. Their friends are kind of douchey. So I don't know. And she has like no relationship with her parents whatsoever. Or, she doesn't have many friends. So I look at the yellow flags and the red flags too. And then we go out and she takes me to a really nice dinner and she's like, oh, I forgot my credit card. And I'm like, okay, she has no money.
Textbook
And I'm
Monica.
still going out with her. Right.
Well, what's interesting? It makes me think of advice I heard long ago. When dealing with a stalker, the very best response is zero.
That's right.
Any response will be interpreted by a stalker as
right.
fuel.
Yes.
They can twist you could write fuck off, never call me again, and they will figure out how to make that a
They'll
green
say,
light.
yeah, well, that's like, actually, he really likes me.
Yes.
Right? Because it's like, remember when you were in elementary school and the little boy would kick dirt at you or
right.
pull your pigtails?
Yes.
They read it as that.
That's how
Or
they-
they're scared to be with me and they're
That's right.
Yeah, it's too intense for them.
Yeah, and the love addiction at the extreme is exploitive like that. It does turn into stalking because now she's like not into me, but I'm driving by her house and then I see whose car in the driveway and I'm wondering if I should like climb through the window or,
Yeah.
go over there drunk and get her to have sex with me. Like all these machinations people go through to get what they want, but it's their fantasy. It's not reality of what's happening.
I don't even know if this is an answerable question, but why do you want me? Is it something I've given because I'm making you feel a specific way? Or is it just because you've just decided this is the person?
It's because the love addict decides this is the person and it's a projection of what I need you to be because I never got what I wanted and needed. But it's a one-person system. I'm not seeing you. I'm not reading the cues.
Yeah.
And that's probably why, in the first place, you wouldn't have wanted me if you were a secure or solid person.
Right.
It would be like, okay, this person's not quite right.
So that book, He's Just Not That Into You, was basically for fantasy addicts.
Yeah, in large part, and saying get into reality. Because a realistic scenario is we go out, we like each other, we agree we're going to meet again. She's on time. Then she says she's going to call and she doesn't. And she said my cell phone was dead. And I'm like, okay. And that really was the truth. And I meet her best friend and she's okay, but I really like her sister and her mom.
right.
Yeah.
You see? So there's
And
an
like a three-strike
oscillation.
system.
But mostly I keep getting green lights to keep moving forward. I realize there's no perfect partner,
Yeah.
that we're all impossible people to live with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, even
Any
ourselves.
problem?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that is a more secure system moving forward. And we're listening to each other, we're talking, we're getting to know each other. The love addict will also, like the sex addict, just lunge at the sex. It's all about that right off the bat to
Yeah.
seal the deal out of my anxiety, to make
Yeah.
it happen.
Intriguing.
Yes.
This is a concept I heard there that I was like, oh, I'm so guilty of this, if I understand it correctly. Could you maybe give us a definition of intriguing?
Well, I think it's similar to what I've been talking about, but it's more about trying to get that person's attention also. Right? With the intent of being sexual. So, looking at that person, checking them out, giving bodily based signals that I'm
Rhythm. I call it
interested.
rhythm. Just
Great,
shooting some
sure.
rhythm at somebody.
Right. That's a great word also.
Yeah. It would be my preference that I knew every single female I met was in love with me. That would be my ideal world I'd live in. Now,
Sure.
granted, you wouldn't give it to me right away. I'd have to earn it every single time. But I would like to go from person to person to person and just get everyone's approval
Right.
slowly. And I'm married, so there's some level I feel like is okay, flirty, but I'm not going to ask for your phone number.
Right. But I think that's a healthy space. And I just did a webinar on flirtation on Monday. And I talked about flirtation is exchanging energy without intent. There's no intention to flirtation. You can flirt with babies, old ladies.
I flirt with dudes probably even worse than I flirt
Exactly,
with women.
right.
Yeah.
And all of that is about saying, I see you. I see your beauty or your humor or your wit. And there is an energy exchange with that. Look, all human beings need validation to a certain extent. The idea, though, is that we internalize it so that we can walk with confidence and know that we're good enough on any given day. Good enough, not perfect, but enough, as opposed to people that have extreme narcissistic wounding where they really weren't seen as children. So it's a bottomless pit of look at me, see me, want me. Those people can be emotional vampires.
Those people become actors.
Right. It's true. Actors. And we see that a lot in sex addicts also, that chronic validation.
Now, has your line of work been at all challenging in your own life?
You mean sexually?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I've gone through all sorts of iterations with it. But at this stage in my life, I'm very, very interested in the tantric practices, which are really about deep in close connection with my partner.
Now, I have a very generic stereotype movie version of what tantric is. My interpretation is just you have sex and try not to have an orgasm.
No, that's
not right.
That was like the old Sting thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
So please help me understand.
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert in this by any means, but these practices come from the Hindu tradition, and they are about sort of the honoring of the masculine and the feminine, a deep, deep honoring. So it's not just about lunging at genital sex. It's about close in eye connection, breathing together, touch, lots and lots of touch. So it really is slowing down the sexual experience and building an erotic charge so that we are all our own best lovers. Not looking for someone else to bring me to orgasm. We're all responsible for our own orgasm. We need to know what we need and what works for us and communicate that to our partners.
Yeah.
But when there is a deep honoring of oneself and a deep love for oneself and a desire to bring that to the other, therein lies this connection that can be, you could call it incredibly spiritual and deeply novel, because when you look into your partner's eyes, that's one of the most novel things we can do because it's activating the autonomic nervous system.
That's why people love movies. It's a very privileged point of view to stare at someone's face without any panic of I'm not allowed to do this. That's the appeal of it.
Right. But one of the, I think, propositions of becoming deeply intimate is about getting present in one's body and being able to make eye contact in the most intimate, quiet moments. So a quiet love, not this, like pornographic sex.
Turbocharged, yeah.
Exactly. And sex can be incredibly aggressive and sweaty and erotic from these moments of meeting. But then it becomes about a heart connection that leads to eroticism as opposed to a full-on crotch connection, which is about getting off, which is what porn is.
Right.
So it's not an anti-sex movement. My feeling about sex addiction, recovery is about creating a very alive sexuality that has no shame to it, right? No pain, no degradation, unless you explicitly say, hey, I'm into that.
Yes.
Right? So that there's an intentionality behind it. And that's the distinction.
Okay. Now, fidelity, monogamy, what direction do you think it's moving in?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be different for everybody. And that's part of what is interesting to me is that a couple, was it last year, there was a big article in the New York Times about polyamory and open relationships. They really did a good job of featuring couples that were in open relationships. And I think there's a generation of people that are trying this out to see if it works. And it may work for some, and it may not work for others. So we may be moving more in that direction. There are some people that are going to be more simpatico with solosexuality and asexuality. The binary is going the way of the dodo bird, I'm pretty sure, that there are going to be all these different iterations of sexual expression, and the normative standard is going to continue to melt away, even in the face of the Puritans holding on to a male and a female in a monogamous committed relationship.
Yeah, the moment for me that it hit me like a ton of bricks was in a meeting with like a 23-year-old guy sharing about hooking up with trans prostitutes. And this is, by all other measures, a heterosexual male.
Right.
And the way he was talking about it, it like hit me all of a sudden. I was like, oh, my whole definition is dated. Like for a 23-year-old, he's just sexual. And sexual includes sometimes hooking up with
whatever feels good.
Yes. There's not even an inclination to label that for that person.
Yeah. What I think we're seeing is that male sexuality is much more fluid than we ever wanted to admit to.
Yes, this is something I'm now moving off of, but it's very still, I can admit, confusing to me because in my life, generally I had known lesbians that had been with men and women. I had never met an openly gay male who ever went back to a female.
Yeah,
I just had
that's-
never seen
right.
that. But I'm no longer thinking that that's a fact. I don't know that that's relevant anymore.
I don't know that it is. And I think what I see is a lot of straight men who identify as straight having sex with other men in all different iterations. Again, because pleasure is pleasure.
Yeah.
And, there was a woman named Jane Ward who wrote a book a couple years ago called Not Gay. I don't know if you
Okay.
remember seeing that book. And
No.
she was very interested in Craigslist when it was up and all these single white men seeking sex with men. So they were Caucasian men, don't know if they were all single, but they were all Caucasian men looking for sex with other men. And when she interviewed them to find out why they did it and whether they were gay or not, the distinguishing factor whether they were gay or not was if they said they weren't gay. And that's why the book was called Not Gay.
Right.
Because gay is a lifestyle. Gay is a sexual orientation, as opposed to, no, this was about hooking up. Because you can't find like a public bathroom where women are hanging out wanting to have sex with guys. They don't exist.
No,
There are
no.
plenty of guys that'll hook up with guys.
Yeah.
Bathrooms, beaches, parks, you name it.
Yes. Well, I am a big proponent of the direction it's moving. And we always tout this documentary we love called The Mask We Live In.
Yeah.
Have you
seen
yes,
that?
I have. Yeah.
It's incredible. And they make a great point in there that when you do psychological evaluations on 10,000 people, what you really find is that men and women are really different by
Yeah.
about 5% on either shoulder, which is encouraging and interesting. And I believe.
And we see this from infant developmental studies too now.
Right. The men are just as empathetic, but we beat it out of them. And there's all
Right.
these things, right? The one thing I'm going to push back on is we see when you have an all-male population what their sex life is versus an all-female population. That's just, to me, completely undeniable. As someone with many gay male friends, in the amount of sex that's happening daily and the frequency and the, as you say, they'll go to a bathhouse and they might hook up with 4 dudes in under an hour. You're not seeing women do that.
No, I mean, like a guy can be in a restaurant and see an attractive guy and they can go have sex and be back and for cocktails.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I think that'll stay consistent in the
Right.
future, I feel like. I can't imagine that evolving much. That's just this poison we have, testosterone, no?
Yeah, that's right.
So I was in a 9-year open relationship. I would say the one downside that I couldn't argue wasn't a downside is just that we neglected our sex life.
Right. It takes the most work. And it's so interesting that it's the thing couples marginalize the fastest because of the discomfort and the time it takes.
And there's this erroneous belief that it's something that should be happening naturally. Like,
Right. And spontaneously. And you should want it all the time. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
all this mythology.
and unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. You
doesn't.
gotta like schedule a fucking date, and you gotta, you maybe gotta have a
And
massage.
there's the laptop.
Yes, and the phone and all these things.
Right.
I would be interested in hearing people living polyamorous lifestyles. They must have a very strict dedication to maintaining their own sex life.
Yeah, I think it's challenging for people. I mean, just scheduling all those people is kind of a nightmare. Like, it's hard enough to schedule 2 people.
I don't know how you do it with kids. I mean, I
Yeah.
can see you doing it without children, but
Right.
I really can't imagine how you would.
I think it's harder. And I'm starting to think also that monogamy may be for people that are more mature because it takes so much work and the level of vulnerability that's required to say to somebody after you've been married to them 15, 20 years, that sometimes I wonder if I still want to be married to you, or I wonder if I'm still attracted to you, or this is what I don't like about my own body. And can you hear this from a neutral place without taking it personally or running or making it into something
Yeah.
where we can be really emotionally naked with each other? Takes a level of maturity.
Well, I am head over heels in love with my wife. I respect her. I admire her. She's a perfect mother. But I will think, not based in any discomfort, unhappiness, I'll just go, this is going to be the rest of my life. This is the last personality I'll try on. This is
Right.
the last.
Yeah.
That can sound daunting. Like, I'll never wander around Europe and bump into somebody and get to know them. Like, okay, well, that's something I have to accept. Not born out of any unhappiness.
No, it's just, that's the novelty seeking. But I would say that to start to, and this takes work, really orient your compass towards the deep novelty in her, the infinite sense of her that you can't possibly know right now because you haven't known her 5 years more or 10 years more. Because I think there's something powerful about knowing someone deeply over time that helps us to know ourselves in ways we couldn't have known otherwise.
Because my knee jerk to that is, well, no, I know her. I can probably predict what she's going to do much more accurately than she can.
That's a different kind of knowing that what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
The kind of knowing I'm talking about was what I was talking about before, when you're deeply gazing into her eyes and you're gazing into the universe. It's a visceral connection. It's like a right brain to right brain communication, body to body communication.
That's producing oxytocin, I assume?
Well,
or-
dopamine initially, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And with dopamine loves novelty. And so you'll start to see her as goddess, lover, erotic consort. And it's not the personality of who she is and what you know she's going to say. It's the essence of who she is, if I can describe it that way.
Sure, the intangible being inside
That's
of there.
right, yeah. The siren, the temptress, like all of the sort of mythological characters that represent aspects of humanity and nature.
That sounds infinite.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
What are your thoughts about porn? But what do we think? I remember being in college and there was a lot of pro porn. Sometimes it was even a feminist statement
Right.
to be pro pornography. There's literature that says it's a great pressure valve for people. Some people say it leads to rape and sexual dysfunction. Others will prove that it's lower where that's available. So what does current science say about pornography?
Well, look, there is a lot of science that is looking at the way porn impacts young brains. So I don't have any morality about porn as long as it's between consensual adults. I'm not into porn with children or animals or innocents that cannot consent.
Right.
But
What about dolphins? They seem pretty horny.
I don't think so.
I think dolphins are horny.
You do?
I do. Well, you always hear these stories about them trying to have sex with female swimmers.
maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Well, I
It's
haven't
like hard
seen
to
it.
feel bad for them.
I have not seen dolphin porn. I'll tell
Well.
you that. What I do have a problem with is the fact that pornography is completely unregulated online, and that any child can open a laptop and see intense, hardcore,
Yeah.
even violent pornography. That's a problem for me.
Yeah, me
because
too.
Look, we have limits on weed in California. You have to be a certain age, buying alcohol, buying tobacco, gambling. And there used to be a time when you had to be an adult to look at porn. You had to have a credit card, remember? And then with the advent of the tube channels, anybody can look at it anytime.
Yeah. In fact, you can accidentally look at it.
Well, are you kidding? The pornographers know what words to put keywords into. So you got an 8-year-old little girl typing in Miss Kitty or pussy, and boom, you've got pornography popping up.
Yeah.
And the impact that has, first of all, the average age of children looking at pornography right now is 8 years old.
Fantastic.
So imagine seeing, and I've had many clients who are now 30 years old, 20 years old. They were looking at porn from the age of 8. By the time they were 20, they had erectile dysfunction. And there are studies on porn-induced erectile dysfunction. And a bunch of sexologists are screaming hearing me now saying that it's not real, but it's real for a lot of people, which is why Gabe Deem started Reboot Nation and Alexander Rhodes started the No Fat movement on Reddit. I mean, these are online
What's the
platforms.
no fat move?
The no masturbation
Oh, okay.
to pornography. And these are grassroots young men that have started these forums to help each other get off of porn because they feel like they're addicted to it.
Yeah.
There are no therapists in sight. They don't call it addiction. They just say, we have a problem with this.
Well, they have fucking gaming addiction in South
Exactly,
Korea.
right.
They recognize that. How on earth could you not recognize?
Because it impacts the brain in the exact same way. It's intermittent reward. It's dopaminergic. It's addictive. And so young, especially male brains start to wire and myelinate to these images very tenaciously because every brain is different. So let's say your kids have nobody at home after school and they come home and they put that on and they start to look at it over and over and over again. They're grossed out by it. They're freaked out by it. But it's like the accident by the side of the road. They can't stop looking at
Sure,
it.
yeah.
And so some people, from, alcoholism are just more compulsive than others.
Yeah.
Some kids will take it or leave it. Some kids won't be able to stop looking at it. And if parents had the option to opt in or opt out, then we wouldn't have this problem. But the porn industry is a $96 billion a year industry worldwide.
Wow.
And how, by the way? It seems like everyone's getting it for free.
Yeah.
I guess the advertisements on the
advertisements, yes.
wow, $96 billion.
That's right. And so they are very invested in discrediting the research. And so it makes it very difficult to get any kind of parental controls on this problem at all.
Yeah.
And do you think it's also affecting expectation? It's maybe
Yes.
why people are moving towards just solo sex, because real sex isn't that interesting anymore because you can get whatever you
It is
want.
if you use ecstasy while you're doing it.
Okay.
I just want to be on record saying that from experience.
But it's not
because-
just that, Monica. I had a woman call me once a couple of years ago. She was 27. She worked for, I think, Penthouse. She wanted to interview me about sex addiction. And she said, you know what, I don't go out with guys my age anymore. And I said, how come? She said, because the first thing they want to do is come on my face. Because that's what they see in porn. They just think
Yes.
that's what girls want. And
Yeah.
girls will also, when I say girls, I mean young women in their 20s, a lot of them will admit to doing it, not because they want it, because they think that's what guys want, because that's what's in porn.
Exactly.
Even though we don't want it or we're not sure why we're
it
doing it.
must be sexy.
Right.
Yeah.
Precisely.
But boy, it is a slippery slope, because I remember the exact turn when all of a sudden pornos were all about the girls gagging
Yeah.
when they gave oral sex. I want to say that was like probably about 16 years ago. And I remember going to a friend's house, a married couple, and I was like, oh, I saw this fucking video. I was watching porn and I wanted to just beat the shit out of these guys. Like they were all about just gag these girls. And the wife was like, that's awesome. And I was a little bit like, oh, that's interesting. And this woman who's very empowered digs that.
Right.
And who the fuck am I to say that?
Exactly.
So that's where it gets all very murky.
It does. I mean, and that's where we come into these matter of consent and people really talking to each other about what they like sexually, what they don't, what's okay, what isn't.
Yeah.
Not all women want to be spanked or have their hair pulled, but a bunch of women think it's hot.
Yeah, boy.
so-
how does someone navigate that?
By talking about it.
Yeah. by
Yeah, I think it's harder for young adults, like people in their early 20s.
Yeah.
Because there's still a lot of self-consciousness about sex and sexuality.
Did you read Missoula by John Krakauer by chance?
I didn't, no.
It was all about rape, about Missoula. And my wife and I were reading it at the exact same time. My wife and I felt bad for both people. Virgin boy, female girl, both hammered. She's in and out of consciousness. He starts putting his fingers in her and he's saying, I'm going to make you squirt. This kid's never even kissed a girl.
Right,
And
wow.
his first move is going to be something he saw in a porn. It's terrible for her. No question
Sure.
about it. She's the victim. But my wife and I both were like, also, I feel bad for this kid. Like, this is what he thinks a woman would want.
Right. Or all women's bodies do that.
Yes.
So that goes then to our lack of sex education in this country,
Yes.
which is just about don't get pregnant, don't get HIV, don't get a STD,
Right.
don't.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning and the end of it. There's nothing about sexual pleasure, about desire, about
Stating your needs.
yeah,
your
and
likes.
experiencing your own body and what this particular body likes, which is different than the other bodies.
Yeah.
No, just none of it.
And do you think the foundational fear of it is that by talking about it, it'll encourage kids to do it earlier?
Yes,
I mean,
but the irony is by not talking about it, they're doing so much more of it in different ways. Like there was this whole movement, I think about 10 years ago now, this, what was it called, where the girls got the rings from their fathers? Do you remember this?
chastity, something.
I don't
I don't
remember what they were
know.
called. But it was sort of like the more conservative faction was encouraging their daughters to not have sex, abstinence only. So they weren't having vaginal intercourse. They were having anal sex.
Of course.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so they could
yeah.
stay virgins.
Right.
I've always loved that rationale.
Well, there's something really, poetic justice in that. Is
Good news, Mike.
Yeah.
Jenny is still a
Virgin, exactly,
Vaginal virgin, but
right.
she's had anal sex 100 times.
right. And you get to walk her down the aisle.
What do you see as the future of sex in America?
Well, I think that ties back to what we were saying. Some people are predicting that we're moving towards a more solo sex culture the way the Japanese have. that it's burdensome and bothersome. And I think this ties into, I mean, these are socio-political, cultural questions, but ties into the level of secure attachment we have in this country and how we're raising our children. So if you have a more avoidant population, you're going to have a bigger population of masturbators and people that are looking at internet porn because they don't connect with other human beings. I mean, that's kind of a doomsday scenario, but we have to look at that secure attachment in this country has significantly reduced from the 1970s.
Yeah, and I try to resist the urge of just being an old man where things aren't the way they were when I was a kid, so they're implicitly wrong. But I will argue you're not going to get around the fact that we are a social primate by design. It's just that simple. We're supposed to be with 100 other primates in close proximity at all times. That's what we're designed to live as. So I do think we're going to have unavoidable consequences of the isolation that technology allows for.
Right, and especially with all this AI and, people having sex with robotic dolls and, I mean, what's going to happen? And I already think that the internet has changed the way we have sex. And this is the good news. Like with 50 Shades of Grey, no matter how horrendous, the book was poorly written, and it was a movement. And there are lots and lots of young women that I talk to in their early 30s that all of them are into some kind of light BDSM. And they've seen more and they're more experimental, I'm sure, than their mothers ever were. So it really has stretched the capacity for pleasure and trying things.
And that is the perfect example to illustrate the complexity of the issue, because someone in here that was being very critical of that book, because the female was exhibiting visual signs of arousal, yet she was succumbing to his will. And the point was you can have visual signs of arousal and it can still be non-consensual and all this stuff.
Right.
And then it just occurred to me later after I left, I was like, but it was written by a woman, so
that's right.
you can't avoid that part of it.
And women read it.
Women read it. A woman wrote it. So
like
you can be mad at it, but a woman wrote it. So you can't tell that woman she's not allowed to have that fantasy.
That's right. And one of the things people don't really understand about BDSM is that the sub really has the power in the dyad. The sub.
Ooh, you just threw two words at me that I don't know.
The submissive writes the script for what the dominant can do to her.
Oh.
She says, you can pull my hair, you can spank me, you can't call me names, you can't humiliate me. I like rope play or flogging, but I don't like electrical shock. Like, she defines how this scene is going to be played out.
Yeah.
So she's very much in control. She writes the script and then she surrenders it to the dominant, because she trusts that he's going to do exactly what she said. And that's 50 Shades of Grey. There is an interplay between the two of them. That woman is not just subjugated to that male.
I'd be the worst dom because I'm known for improvisation.
That would be a problem.
Yeah, I would be underemployed as a dom.
Script.
How do people know? And we were kind of hinting at it earlier about like what people could maybe just be aware of as they whip up fantasies or how much time they're spending there. But how do people know if they are sexually compulsive or if they just like a lot of sex? Again, I wrestle with this because I'm super sexualized. I most of my humor is sexual. It's on my mind all the time. I'm also aware of the fact that I'm an abuse survivor. Likely that's a part of the recipe.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. I still enjoy it. So I'm always kind of like, is it a pathology? Is it just who I am? I understand the root of it. Like, what's good? What's bad? Like,
well, the simplest, I think, test is whether your behaviors are secretive, shaming, and abusive. And so if you can go home and tell your wife about, not your dirty thoughts, because no one needs to know the inside of our head on any given day, but what you did, like if you went to a sexual massage parlor today and you had a happy ending and you can tell her and she's like, cool, then there's no problem.
Right.
But if you're doing it and you're spending the family money and you're lying and you're sneaking around, then you got a problem, no matter what it is you're doing. Right? So if it's creating messes or what we call unmanageability in your life, you got a problem. So when you start ignoring your friends, your family, you don't really make commitments to do something because you never know when you want to go do that thing. And really, one of the hallmarks of all addictions is a high level of preoccupation. All you're thinking about all the time.
I have this great example of a friend who I have no judgment of their sexual activity whatsoever, but they have an app and they're on the app around me nonstop in the planning of it. The fact that you're not present with me now because of that thing, that seems like a red flag.
Exactly. Because the primary relationship is with that thing, as you know, with alcohol, with the gambling, with the sex, with the whatever the thing is, then you're no longer really have control over your life.
Yes.
Again, it just depends on the messes that it creates in one's life as to
Yeah.
whether or not it's a problem.
This is just one of my pet peeves. There was a great, I want to say it was either a Radio Lab or This American Life, and it was about Facebook. One of the things that they accidentally discovered was when people post a photograph and they tag you in it, you can ask that Facebook remove that photo, and it gives you a drop-down menu of reasons why you don't want that picture up. And in the original drop-down menu, it said, that's not me, something else, I'm embarrassed, and then other. And what they found quickly with just having that up for like a month, 75% of the people weren't clicking one of the boxes. They were writing under other, it's embarrassing. So no one will check, I'm embarrassed.
Oh.
But they'll write, it's embarrassing. And they changed the drop-down menu to it's embarrassing, and that became a very high percentage of the reasons people pull it down.
Right.
But there's this great window into how people's brains work in that. It's objectively embarrassing, i.e. anyone would be embarrassed. It's not
Right.
my own insecurity.
Yeah.
Versus I'm humiliated by that, or I'm embarrassed by that.
Right.
That
It's too personal.
the second one takes vulnerability, right? And I guess in the world of sex, I do find sometimes that people want desperately to label sex acts, sexuality as objectively wrong, objectively gross, objectively demeaning, objectively anything to get out of owning their own personal triggers or their own personal
Right.
insecurities. And I think that's part of what's driving the whole puritanical wave at times.
It's also what keeps people from really getting close to each other, I think. Because to be that vulnerable to talk about what a person really likes sexually or what they don't like means that they are letting their partner see them in ways that they've maybe never let anybody see them before.
Yeah.
And if I tell you what I really like sexually, I mean, I have had this happen many times where a couple's talking about sex and the other party rolls their eyes. Which is so judgmental and really shaming and humiliating. It may just be that I'm just so embarrassed at the thought of doing that, I'm going to make you out to be a weirdo.
Oh, yes.
But it's really
yes.
my sexual limitation. It's my hang up.
You're right. I'll often hear people say, he's just a freak, or
That's right.
they're a pervert. He wants to have anal sex with me. It's like,
Right.
it's okay to just not want to have anal sex. He doesn't have to be a pervert because you don't want to have anal
Well,
sex.
I don't want to say, well, I'm a prude.
Right.
He's a pervert. I'm not a prude.
Yes, yes.
And so there's
neither are true.
That's right. But there's a real dishonesty in that, as opposed to, are we really going to get vulnerable and talk about why do you like it? Why don't you like it? What are you afraid of? What does it mean about you? Because so animals do not make meaning about sexual acts,
No.
but humans do. So you line up 10 humans and you ask them about anal sex, and one person's going to say it's the most disgusting thing on the planet.
Go to hell for it.
And number 10 says it's the road to nirvana.
Sure,
So which
sure.
is it, right?
Right.
And
right.
that's where I think we get hung up, is that we're dishonest about our fears. And then there's also the meaning we make of it. What does it say about me if I like that act?
Right.
What are you going to think about me if I like that? Because that's not how I comport myself in the world, and I don't want anyone to know that.
Yeah. Is there any statistical evidence that it seems anecdotally in my circle with many male friends who have many wives that the men want more sex?
Many wives, like
Oh, I wish that I had
No. You
friends
didn't
with
mean that.
many wives. No.
Okay, you mean
many
like
friends
lots of
and
friends
many
that are married.
wives.
Okay.
Yeah, many
Wives.
married
Yeah.
friends. Am I being misled by the data around me, the anecdotal data? Do men, I know all of the cliches that are rooted in reality, which is men have sex to be intimate and women, intimacy leads to sex. So right there you have a reversal, which is an issue.
It's a bad design,
It's a very bad design, right?
but it's accurate.
So is that kind of statistically the norm?
Well, I don't know about statistics. I can only tell you what I see clinically.
Okay,
so
yeah,
clinically,
clinically,
yes.
It is.
It is. Part of that, I think, is just, again, biological.
Yes.
But if you look at the work of Helen Fisher, who talks about, why we love and how we fall in love, and that pair bonding happens, and it's usually good for 4 years because that's what it takes to raise a child to fruition. But then the novelty starts to wear off. And with males, you've got, as you said, high testosterone, and some females are higher T and some are lower T.
Yes.
So some have higher sex drives, lower. Once women have children, their energy all going towards their children.
Mm-hmm.
And then we live in this hyper-sexualized culture. Like all I have to do is drive out those gates and down to Sunset and boom, right? There are boobs or abs or something looking
Yeah.
at me.
And
All of it is about, sexuality and being sexual. And some people are going to be more activated by that than others. So I think that is part of the desire disconnect between male and female is a real thing.
Yeah.
And some people just have more drive and less. But ultimately, and especially as we age, the question is, why do we have sex? What happens when it's no longer about a drive? Why do it?
Right. And I would argue to bond, right? And to connect. And
To bond or to really learn about ourselves, that it's about the development of the self. Who am I sexually? At 20, I can just tell you, at 20, all I'd have to do is look at a guy and I was ready to have sex. That was
Right.
it, man.
Sure.
Boom. In their 30s, people are having children and then it's all about children. Then 40s, our sex drive changes again. 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
At some point, there's no drive. And that's when
Yeah.
I think it really requires a maturity and an exploration of who am I sexually now that my body has changed? And what is the meaning of sex for me now? And how do I have sex today that's very different than it was when I was 20 years old?
Yeah.
Because the body just doesn't work in that way anymore. So when people come in and they say, well, none of my girlfriends have sex, I'm like, well, do you want that marriage or do you want this marriage? And what are you going to do to look at what turns you on sexually, what you need, how you can have these conversations with your partner so that you can move towards the kind of sex life you want to have? And that, it's complicated because it's
It
just so
is.
complicated.
Yeah.
So many factors.
Yeah, it is. And it's changing rapidly as it should. And we're evolving and women are empowered and they don't need men for financial security. And
Or
there's
for
all
sexual
these,
pleasure.
Yeah,
Right.
there's just all these developments that are going to probably end up exposing even more of our true nature because we
Oh,
won't be
that's interesting. Yeah, we won't be so battened down.
Yeah,
right?
or driven by some arterial motive when you're really just going to be like, well, you're taken care of. So now whatever you do is you're just probably doing for your own desire.
Right. Yeah, and I think that will be true too with gender expression, as we started out talking about, that everybody will express in what's really true for them.
So your current book
Sex Addiction as Affect Dysregulation.
is your new book.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's part of the Norton series on interpersonal neurobiology, where I'm really looking at a scientific point of view at these underlying regulation issues that lead to attachment, that lead to addiction. That was sort of my theory, that dysregulated children, abused children, become addicts. And that's what I see in classic sex addiction, is that people just don't become sex addicts by accident.
Is there a genetic component like with alcohol addiction?
We don't know for certain, but Patrick Carnes won a Fulbright Award a couple years ago, and the last 2 years has been in the University of Alberta in Canada collecting data, saliva data on 500 sex addicts.
Oh.
And they're going to be looking at all of this data, and they're looking for a genetic factor for sex addiction or component.
Right.
Yeah.
It would make sense.
It would
just
make
on the
sense, right.
surface if all the other addictions seem to have a genetic
Sure.
component. Yeah. I think it's Brene Brown who says genetics load the gun and trauma pulls the trigger.
Yeah, because that's the epigenetic component, is the trauma.
The epigenetic.
Epigenetics has to do with how the environment gets the gene to express.
Right.
So you may have a latent capacity towards something, but the right environmental factors will have it express
It's
it.
very interesting. So sex addiction as affect dysregulation, a neurobiologically informed holistic treatment. Super interesting topic. I'm glad that there are people kind of synthesizing all these different things, right? We're finally in an era where like we're combining biochemical stuff with kind of clinical observations.
Well, all the fields of science are finally talking to each other.
Right. And has technology made that possible?
For
Is that
sure.
what yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, things start making sense and there's some symmetry to all this stuff. And
Right.
yeah, it's really fascinating. So thank you so much for coming in. It
You're
was
welcome.
really
Thank you
fun.
for
I hope
having
you'll write
me.
another
Thank
book
you.
soon so we can ask you more
Yeah.
out there questions.
Good.
All right, be well.
All right, you too.
And now my favorite part of the show, the fact check with my soulmate, Monica Padman. Rolling. Dr. Katehakis. If my name was Dax Katehakis, what line of work do you think I would have found my way into?
Well, you said doctor, so medicine.
Oh, if you're a PhD, you call someone that has a doctorate degree in physics
Yeah.
a doctor, right?
They have a doctorate, yeah.
But you still call them doctor. They always call those professors like Dr. Simmons, best architect in the world.
My grandfather was a doctor.
He was, but not a medical doctor.
No.
Now, let me ask you this. Is it ethical if you're a doctor to examine your family members? It is, right?
Well,
Or you just go straight to gynecology?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't.
okay.
I went to that riddle, the riddle about the mom that has to operate
I can't
on her
operate on
child.
this man. He's my son.
Yeah, just so indicative of the time of that riddle.
Oh, it flummoxed me.
Let's tell people in case they don't know it because they're young
Okay.
and they wouldn't even understand this.
A man and his son are driving a sports car down a windy road. The father loses control of the vehicle.
And he said that he was infallible, but he clearly
Okay.
was not.
Now you're cross-pollinating. You're cross-pollinating fact checks
You can go to Monday's fact check if you
Okay.
want to know more about that.
about my status as infallible. Okay, so the father and son are driving in an Italian sports car down a windy road, and the father, who's had a couple cocktails, loses control of the Ferrari.
Vehicle.
It was a Ferrari Dino. They called it the poor man's Ferrari because it had a 6-cylinder, but they've risen in value. Anyways, he lost control of the Ferrari. They land upside down. The father is killed. The son is rescued from the crashed Ferrari, rushed to the emergency room, straight into the OR. And the surgeon looks down at the boy and says, I can't operate on him. This man's my son. How is that possible?
This boy.
This boy is my son.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, people were like, I don't know, man, that doesn't fucking make sense.
people could not figure it out. that it
Myself
was
included.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was like, oh, yeah. How the fuck
Oh my God.
is he got two? I literally went, oh, it's his stepdad.
And obviously, to everyone listening who I'm sure is young, they'll know it was his mom. The
Yes.
easiest riddle on earth.
In 2019, it's a really easy riddle.
Yeah, it's not even a riddle. It's
No.
just a scenario.
In the 80s,
I heard it in the 90s. I mean, I heard that riddle in class. I did get it immediately, not to brag, but
hold on. What percentage of surgeons were women in the 1980s? Oh my God, my tracheotomy's back. Okay, how about this? This gives a little, at least like cover fire for us. In the 80s, women only made up 2% of surgical residents. So, 98% of the surgeons were men.
yeah.
It was stark. Now that I think about it, even when I asked you that question, I'm still sexist, I guess, because I was picturing like the patriarch of the family being the doctor.
Really?
What do you want me to? I can't grow up in a different time period,
You come from a working mom. That's why this is weird. That's why that riddle
but not
never
a
made
working
sense.
doctor.
Still, though, when that riddle was said, I immediately was like, oh, that's his mom because my mom works.
yeah.
And I think
but
in the
again,
80s, that was a little bit less.
But also, only 2% of surgeons were
Sure,
women, so
sure.
you've probably never seen one.
Okay.
But look, I can be evolved today.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I can recognize my errors. And even when I say it, I recognize, oh, that's an error. And an era. It was an era where women weren't surgeons. That's when I grew up. So my brain cemented in a period where only 2% of the women were surgeons.
Okay.
That's unfortunate for me, but I will probably always be trapped in my first image of a surgeon is going to be a man. I mean, I can think my way through it, but my instincts...
I can still think that's ugh.
Of course. But I would want you to cut me some slack that we grew up in different eras.
Sure.
When I was a kid, smoking was still a very healthy endeavor.
I didn't say that you did anything wrong. You took that so defensively.
Well, no. Rewind the tapes, Rob. When I thought of the person being a doctor, I went to the patriarch and
Yeah.
you went, ugh.
Exactly. I'm going to say ugh to that.
Yes, but that's not me being defensive. You expressly were disappointed that that was my thought. So I feel compelled to explain to you why that's my thought.
But it seemed like you were defending that.
No, I don't defend it. But that is the reality of, I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your nose thing looks like a small pair of headphones.
Oh my goodness, they are headphones for
So
my nose.
It looks like
my
you have
intakebreathing.com nose breathing apparatus.
It looks like you have another tiny pair of headphones on your nose. And you're wearing two
You want to snap a
headphones.
picture of me from there?
Yeah. Anyway.
I'd say at least 3 times a week someone tweets me or Instagrams me who takes your photos.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, always a big compliment to Wob.
Yeah. Anyway, so it looks like you have 2 headphones on. One tiny and one big. Now I can't not see
Anyway, so
it.
if my name was Dax Katehakis,
Uh-huh.
I have an idea of what I'd be doing. What is your idea of what I'd be doing?
I have you in a doctor's office, doctor.
You do?
Yeah, in a lab coat.
I think I would be a structural engineer.
Oh, okay.
Dax Katehakis.
Karate instructor.
Oh, that's really good
Okay,
too.
I think
Dax
that might be
Katehakis.
but a waste of that doctorate degree.
Being a structural engineer?
No, a karate instructor.
Oh, but just as a hobby, I think.
Okay, but you know what?
Tell me.
I don't think you need a doctorate degree to be a structural engineer.
No. But I'm also a professor of engineering.
Oh, you're a
Uh-huh.
professor.
I'm almost like Stark, Iron Man.
Tony Stark.
Tony
Tony
Anthony Stark,
Stark.
where like I still teach a couple of classes at like a prestigious university, but I'm also building like the biggest skyscrapers.
Okay,
And
okay.
I drive like a
And then do you turn a little bit evil?
no, just more sexual.
Oh, I
Like
think
in the classroom, I wear sweaters with like a V-neck sweater.
Sure.
And then when I'm designing my buildings, I'm in like Armani suits and stuff.
Okay.
And I'm a little slimy.
I think there's a period where you turn a little evil.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'll probably start drinking my own Kool-Aid because I'm the best structural engineer
Your
in the
ego
world.
gets huge and you can't really see reality anymore.
No, because I claim to be infallible at structural engineering.
Yeah, you
and then
would.
One
You
of
would
my,
claim.
One of my buildings collapses because I didn't do enough soil sampling for the bedrock, which
Yeah.
has happened in San Francisco. Do you know about this building they built there? And it's sinking way faster than it's supposed to. And they're afraid it's going to fall into other
Oh,
buildings.
jeez.
The other thing that I saw, now that we're on a structural engineering tangent,
Mm-hmm.
is this amazing airport in Japan. I think it services Tokyo. And
Okay.
it's a floating airport. They went and claimed a piece of the water. They put up, seawall. Then they dredged out the water, and then they filled it all with sand and cement. And they built an island to house the airport because they were out of real estate for an airport.
So then did they have to ferry people off the airport to get to
There's
the
a
land?
bridge. They built a bridge.
Oh.
But when I was watching this Discovery Channel show about this, Narita Airport,
Kansai International Airport?
no, it's the like Narita or something. Anyways, so both ends of the building, a very long terminal, right? And then
Okay.
both ends were built on these huge screws because they knew that the island they built would settle unevenly and that they would have to jack up sides of the building. And at the time of this documentary, they were a little worried because they had already run through like 90% of the jacking up capacity and it was only the first like 10 years. I don't know how they... Narita. Is there a Narita airport?
Nagoya,
No?
Kobe,
No? Yeah.
Kyushu, Osaka, Kansai.
Okay, none of these sound like any of the ones you said.
Narita Airport?
God.
Narita International Airport in Narita, Japan.
Wow. But are you sure that's floating?
I'll tell you. I'll fucking tell you right now. It says nothing about it being an
This
island.
map does not.
Okay.
Okay, that's the wrong airport. That was a long walk for nothing. I am kind of impressed I knew the name of a airport in Japan.
Yeah, that's cool.
I guess. I always try to find some silver lining when I'm wrong. You've noticed that. It's the bane of your existence.
I get nervous about the people who had to build that floating airport that's now
Sinking.
sinking. They might get karoshi.
Oh, die from overworking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the stress of
A sinking
now a
terminal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like those guys in Chernobyl.
Oof. Yeah.
Yikes.
Do you say Chernobyl or Chernobyl? Or Chernobyl?
No, please don't associate my mom with that
Chernobyl.
horrible disaster.
I was just thinking of how I botched her name that time. Really bad.
I say Chernobyl.
Chernobyl. Okay, great. Like CHAIR.
That is how I say it.
Chair and then Nobel, like Nobel Peace Prize.
Chernobyl. I wonder if that's my southern accent coming out.
What if they started giving out a Chernobyl Peace Prize and people are like, we're good.
No, thank you. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Alex, speaking of other countries, she's Greek.
Ooh, that's where that fun name comes from.
Yes, and you asked what the Greek stereotype is.
What a
And
crass question.
She kind of blew past it smartly.
Yeah.
But then I looked it up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm tempted to guess.
There's a few that they say that they can't shake.
Shake hands?
Oh, there's a
Oh.
few stereotypes.
I'm like, I've never heard that Greeks don't shake hands.
Okay, the stereotypes are hairy,
Okay.
loud,
Oh.
carefree.
Ooh,
which
that's
is
kind of a nice one.
Gossipers,
Oh.
smokers, and mama's boys and daddy's girls.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm glad we got that out there.
Okay, so she said that nobody goes steady anymore.
Okay.
And yeah, so I was looking at some articles and a lot of them confirmed that. Dating or going on dates does not happen anymore. It's too old-fashioned, too formal. The best you'll get is coffee, a casual drink, or hanging out at someone's house or apartment. If you want to be taken out to a nice dinner, take yourself. Even if people do get together in a way that an older generation would consider an official date, millennials will never call it a date.
This sounds like it's an article in YM. Do you remember that magazine, Young Miss? It was all the
No.
rage in the 90s when I was young. Like every girl in high
Really?
school read YM, Young Miss.
Oh no, I was more of a Cosmo generation.
I feel like every Cosmo cover I've ever read was like 5 blowjob tips to
Yeah.
make your man stay.
Yes.
Basically, the theme always is like, you better get your shit together in the bedroom or you're going to lose your man.
Yeah.
Am I right in that?
Yep,
Okay.
pretty much.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. It was all sex tips, basically.
No,
and
but-
every now and then an article or two about charity.
Boy, this is all really emblematic of the problems because I used to read
is.
Maxim when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
They had a lot of great articles in there. I don't remember any sex tips, and there should have been.
Right.
It takes a lot more knowledge to get a woman off than a man.
I
So
think you're right.
if anyone should be being educated, it's the men.
It's true.
Yeah.
Boys'
you could probably
magazines that
slap
did
a
that?
young man's penis and it would ejaculate. I mean, it doesn't take much.
But there are endless articles about tricks and tips and
yeah.
do this and practice this.
It's not even realistic. Like, yeah, if your goal is to get your man off in 2 seconds, which no one wants, I guess, though, sometimes that is the...
Probably not at that age.
No, but if you're in a hurry, maybe. The
Maybe.
article should have been like, if you're in a hurry, here's 5 tips.
Yeah, that should just be one article one time,
One
not
year.
500 articles every year. Yeah, that's interesting.
And the other article should have been how to get yourself off while you're having sex.
Yeah,
That'd
I mean,
be helpful.
there might have been that.
There probably is.
There probably is, but yeah, you're right. That's not
Yeah.
great.
No. We just have a pole in our pants. There's not a bunch of stuff. You know,
Right.
there's not a menorah, majora, clitoris, vaginal canal.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, they do say, though, that the prostate is the male G spot. I've yet to experience that, but I've heard that.
Really?
Have you heard that?
Mm-mm.
I've heard that.
You've heard that, right? Yeah.
Probably from him.
Well, I love all this, by the way. I never was into taking anyone on a date. I was like, let's just go hang out. Let's not have it a forced, awkward,
Right.
high stakes, stare at
Dating
each
is
other.
awful.
Ugh, sit across from each other. You're strangers. Stare directly at each other's faces
It's my
and then eat a
nightmare.
fucking meal, which is like
And
already
stuff's falling out of your mouth.
and what you order and will you get gas, all that stuff. Forget it. Let's play pickup basketball, or I'll join you at the fucking flea market and we'll look at shit.
Yeah,
Now
that's
we're-
nice.
Let's
That's a date, though. Flea market. It's just a cool date. It's like a
Yeah.
fun date.
yeah.
Fun date. I said my favorite date would be to go to the Barnes and Noble, but this is once you know the person. Go to Barnes and Noble or a bookstore, and then you guys pick out a book for the other person. I read this on
Oh.
a blog.
Oh.
Also, I love the bookstore so much.
Yeah.
Anyway, so to go to the bookstore, find a book for the other person, and then you go to dinner, probably pasta,
Uh-huh.
and then you give each other your books.
Probably pasta. Oh, that's great. Everyone gets nice and bloated and full, and then roll around with your distended bellies.
Yep.
Smear them around on each other. Love it.
Yeah.
Let the gas fly.
So you said that cocaine is a 3-time inhibitor. What does that mean?
So SSRIs, which is the common antidepressant in the country, be it Zoloft or all these different
Prozac.
Those are serotonin uptake inhibitors.
Right.
You're making serotonin and then it is reabsorbed and then you make more, right? So basically what those drugs do is prevent the absorption so that the serotonin's floating around your brain longer before it is uptaked uptook.
Reuptake.
Yeah, reuptake. That's why there's no past tense for uptake, I guess. So they had to say re.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, again.
Diarrhea.
Mm.
When you're sliding in the first and you feel a juicy burst.
Is that your favorite one?
Sarah-ria.
Oh. Is that your favorite?
Song?
Juicy burst. You know, there's like different iterations of that. Like,
Yeah, well, you know what's weird though is there's nothing for second. They just pretend that the baseball goes first base, third base, home.
oh.
Because when you're
Well, they
sliding
couldn't
into
rhyme
third
it.
and you feel a juicy turd, diarrhea. When you're sliding into home and your pants are full of foam, diarrhea.
Oh,
Such
full
a
of
good song.
foam.
Jess does a great version of that.
He does?
Oh my God, he does a beautiful. He's like, when you're sliding into first.
Oh, he
and
sings
you
it
feel
beautifully.
a juicy burst, diarrhea.
There's a verse for second base.
What is
When
it?
you're sliding into two and your pants are filled with goo.
Oh, so they had to call it two.
Yeah, because you can't rhyme
That's
second.
a cheat.
That's
Yeah.
a cheat, yeah. So you're saying that cocaine,
Yes, disrupts the uptake of dopamine, serotonin, and
something else?
something else.
It says cocaine binds to the uptake pumps and prevents them from removing dopamine from the synapse. This results in more dopamine in the synapse and more dopamine receptors are activated. This only talks about dopamine. I couldn't find anything about 3 times.
Yeah, I was reading something recently about it, and I was like, oh, that's why it's so good.
Mm.
Cocaine uptake inhibitor. Reuptake. I
Yeah,
can't
you have to
say,
do
yeah, I gotta
reuptake.
say reuptake.
That was part of my Googling problem at first. Because I guess the SSRI, the R is reuptake, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess it is.
Anyway, but I didn't find 3 time, just
Yeah,
FYI. But we'll
maybe
keep
I was-
looking.
Yeah.
Okay, so the percentage of strippers who were abused.
Oh, is there a number on this?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Between 66 and 90%.
Ooh.
Yeah, as children. So I've got a lot of statistics about strippers
Oh, give it to
that
me.
are interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start with some happy ones.
Okay. They make great money per hour.
Well, average earnings,
Okay.
$70,000 to $100,000.
Oh, that's a good wage.
It is. It is. It's, according to Malcolm Gladwell's study, enough to be happy.
Right.
6th largest U.S. Although it says 6th largest and there's 8 here, so.
I can guess 2 of them for sure.
Okay, largest U.S. market.
For strippers?
Yeah.
It's either Dallas or Atlanta.
Atlanta's in there and Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess Vegas has to be in there.
Vegas is in there.
Okay, so Vegas, Dallas, Atlanta,
And there's 8 of these.
New York?
No.
Oh, okay. What hit me then?
Houston. Could you, is that making sense? I think
It
you should try a
is.
little more. I think you'll know some more if you think.
Okay. New Orleans?
No. I'll give you a clue. The next 3 cities are in the same state.
And they're in the same. Oh, Florida. Yes. Okay, so Orlando,
Yep.
Miami,
Yep.
Jacksonville.
No.
What?
Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale. Nice. Right, of course.
And then Los Angeles is in there too.
Oh, great job,
I
LA.
know. Good
it's
job
rare
for
that
us.
LA finds itself on a list with 2 Texas cities, 3 Florida cities,
That's right.
Vegas.
And Atlanta.
and Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole make it rain thing is an Atlanta phenomenon, right? It's
I
the
think so.
rappers in Atlanta. It's
Yeah.
a lot more socially acceptable to like hang at strip clubs, I think, in Atlanta than
Yeah.
here. Like we have them here, but you never hear anyone like any dudes bragging that they spent the day at the strip
Well,
club.
yeah, there was one at my college.
What?
Yeah, I went there.
Oh, fun. Did you get a rap
Toppers.
dance?
It was called Toppers. I wonder if it's still there.
Toppers. That's an ironic name. So you didn't have tops, right? Should have been called toplesses.
Correct. Leandra and I did a production of Closer.
The
play.
Oh,
Yeah.
then brought to the big screen by Mike Nichols.
Correct.
Yeah.
So then I went for research.
Okay. At like, because you were going to play the Natalie Portman character?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Leandra didn't go. So it was just me and then the guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would have been great if it was just you.
me. And then I went another time with my group of friends. We went.
To a male review?
No. Oh, well, then I've also been to that for
Oh,
like a bachelor party.
Oh,
I've been
you
to
have?
many.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Tell me about the male one. Because I want to go so bad, but I want to be discreet about this. But I think there's nothing goofier
It's
than
so
guys
silly.
dancing sexy and smacking their penises on people. I think it's
Yeah.
the my dream. I've been asking for the same birthday present for 7 years.
I know we got to do it.
Thunder Down Under. I
Yep.
want front row seats, and I want to scream the whole time. But I've seen a lot of videos online of these bachelorette parties that go haywire.
Yeah.
And they're smacking their penises on people. When you went, were they smacking their junk into women's faces?
I mean, I don't remember it being like on their face.
Like they're in their
no.
little panties.
Yeah.
And then they're
they are.
smacking their panties, which is clearly filled with dong. They're smacking their
I
panties in
think
the
they
women's
are
face.
doing weird stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
it's weird.
The one I've seen too, the guys do is they do the splits and then they start popping their butt cheeks up and down. And it just, to me, it doesn't read as sexy on a man.
No,
I'm
it's
probably
not
in trouble.
sexy, but it's funny. But then people get wrapped up, I think. They get really
Swept
wrapped up in what's going on. See,
I
this
wonder
is why I wish I never drank alcohol.
because you'd remember it
I
better?
don't have a good memory of that night. And I think my friend and I,
Blew one of them?
no, but I think we did have like a special dance.
Oh, wow.
But I don't really
Can you call
remember.
that friend and
Yeah,
do an update?
actually, I will find out if that happened.
Yeah.
And I'll report back next time.
Because
But
maybe you got pantied in the face.
I
and you
might
go,
have.
Oh, man. You know what? I'm going to say this.
Say it.
If we go to the mail review thing, I want to get hit in the head with a,
Penis.
not a bare penis, but in the panties.
You do?
in
I
the
feel
back
like
of the head. I think I would start laughing so
you
hard
would
if
not.
I felt
You
someone's...
would punch that person.
No. If I asked for it, if I went in there and I was like talking to you and all of a sudden I felt this pitter patter on the back of my head and I turned around, there's little blue panties bouncing around, hit me in the way they poke a donkey to get it to go up a hill. Like that's what would be happening to the back of my head.
I truly think that you would react in a way that you wouldn't even expect, and you would like get really angry.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, I hope not.
Wait, let's find out. This could be a challenge we could go.
Okay, well,
on air.
it's almost Rob's birthday. His birthday's this week, so maybe we should arrange for Rob to have some penis.
It's today when this is
when this
Oh.
airs, it's today.
It's Rob's birthday today.
It's
Should
Rob's
we find a
birthday
mail
today.
review and
Yes.
get boxed around?
Yes.
I'll tell you why I'll like it. The same reason I really loved that scene with Ryan in Chips where we were banging our penises
You
together.
do love
Because I like things that feel uncomfortable and weird to me. I like new feelings.
You do. That's safe with Ryan. And that's also completely under your control. You wrote that scene. You directed that scene. It was your best friend,
Mhm.
your favorite person in the world,
Mhm.
callback.
Mm.
And
I had control.
if you didn't have control, I don't think you'd like it. I just don't.
Right. And I guess we'll just have to find out. But to me, I think it's so silly. I think it would be the
is so
goofiest, silliest. I think men's penises are the stupidest, silliest appendages in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
You have the stick hanging between your legs.
So weird.
It's
yeah.
so stupid. They look ridiculous. Like,
Okay.
for me to be banging my penis against Ryan Hansen's,
Right.
it gives me the weirdest butterflies in my stomach. Not sexual, but like, I don't know. There's a physiological, and it makes me giggle because I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
And then the giggling is really fun. So Ryan and I, you couldn't say that we enjoyed the feeling of our penises hitting each other, but we loved the giggle session that came out of that.
Sure.
And I just think if Ryan and I were at the strip club and you guys had paid these guys off and they just started whacking the back of our heads with those little panties on, I have to assume I would start laughing.
Maybe you would.
Okay.
Do you know, these penises are kind of like legs that didn't fully grow.
Mm-hmm.
You
Like
know,
a baby leg.
Tiny legs.
Yes, an infant
You
leg.
guys have 3 legs, and one is just tiny, forgot to grow.
Ideally for us, we have 3 legs.
Yeah.
Not for women, but between each other, yes. Ideally, it's
Oh,
3 legs.
Jeez. Oh, jeez, God. Okay, some more facts about strippers, sad ones. So, yeah, between 66 and 90% of women in the sex industry were sexually abused as children.
Sex industry or strippers?
This whole thing was about strippers, but it is saying sex industry.
Okay.
So maybe that's
Sex
also,
workers as well.
it could be, yeah. 89% of women in the sex industry said they wanted to escape but had no other means for survival. Strippers are often substance abusers. One study found the number to be around 40%.
That doesn't seem that high to me.
Women who work in the sex industry have only a 25% chance of making a marriage last for at least 3 years. 70% of strippers reported they've been followed home, and 42% say they've been stalked.
Oof.
4,000 clubs in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had kind of an inside look at the whole culture when I lived in Santa Barbara. I had a high school friend who moved to Santa Barbara after I did, and she stripped at a place called Spearmint Rhino.
Okay.
And I would often hang out at her apartment, and her roommate was a stripper as well.
Okay.
And I was kind of privy to that whole lifestyle of theirs.
Ugh.
Yeah, there was a lot of alcohol consumption and some drug consumption. And
Yeah. It's rough. Okay, so the Esther quote that we couldn't really exactly remember, but you said, I think, almost exactly right, which is a Proust. Is that how you say it?
Proust.
Proust.
I think so.
It is our imagination that is responsible for love, not the other person. Basically what you said. Okay. Are dolphins sexual?
Oh, they're so horny. It's crazy. They've
Well-
raped females, right? Humans.
Well, no.
That's the rumor.
I know. I think that's just a rumor, though. I don't think that's true. Whales and dolphins have surprisingly interesting sex lives, replete with various positions, elaborate vaginas, and a rare type of penis that's almost always erect.
Oh, how lucky. How lucky for everyone.
Some species, like dusky dolphins,
Ooh.
copulate belly to belly.
Oh, so they can look eye to eye.
Bottlenose dolphins seem to make a T formation, where the male crosses the female exactly at her midline. Harbor porpoises are really unique in that they wait for the female to come to the surface of the water to take a breath, then they leap out of the water and try to hook her with their penis.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
In the
fun.
blowhole?
Yeah, isn't that fun?
Yeah.
So one of the questions is, could it be that some of the positions are just for fun? They have sex all year round, even when they can only conceive for certain periods of the year.
So recreationally.
By looking at how the genitals align, we can now say certain body positions are more likely to lead to successful fertilization than others, which might be for the purposes other than reproducing. Is it play? Is it working out hierarchies? Is it establishing dominance? Is it learning? There could be many functions of sex.
Isn't that always the case?
Yeah.
You know, dolphins became a part of a really compelling dinner table debate we all had one time, which was bestiality. You know, because quite often these homophobes, they would say, oh yeah, let's legalize gay marriage. And then let's just also allow people to marry animals, right? So they would compare something criminal with something that's not criminal.
Right.
And something that's definitely amoral and unethical, because there is someone suffering,
Exactly.
an animal suffering if a man is humping it.
Yes. And they
But
have no consent or control.
no consent, they're a victim, it's harmful. But then I thought, the one exception to that is, I guarantee a dolphin would love to have a relationship with a female, a human, in which case that dolphin would not be a victim at all.
We don't know. How do we know?
So if the animal has an erection and starts humping, my presumption is, oh, it wanted to. It was hard and it started humping.
Okay, but this is where we
Like-
get into some tricky, just because.
A man humping a female dog is moral. It's clearly immoral.
Okay.
But a German Shepherd humping a woman, I don't know that it's as clear for me.
Okay, but just because you get an erection doesn't mean that your brain is saying, yes, I want that.
Boy, that's tricky. I
You
think
could
the
get
dog wants
married
it.
men get erections. A woman just saw that they were erect and thought, well, I guess that means we can have sex because they clearly want to. Doesn't mean you can.
Wait, is the man married? You're saying
Yes,
he's married.
the man is married, and
He's
they
a
could get an
married man.
erection, and they could still get erections around other women. It doesn't mean seeing an erection does not equal consent. Is my point.
Right.
There needs to be a verbal consent.
Agreed. But what about an erection followed by getting on the female and then humping? That's clearly consent. At that point, they're driving the thing.
Okay.
This is just a fun, like, if you
Yeah.
open yourself up to this as kind of a Jonathan Haidt kind of
Moral.
moral thought experiment.
Yep.
Which is, I bet the male dog, if it decides to hump, it probably enjoys it. So what are the moral consequences of that? It's interesting.
But we also don't know enough about.
Canine psychology.
Yes.
Well,
we don't really.
Glad you asked.
We don't.
I happen to know a tremendous amount.
Maybe that's what Dr. Dax Katehakis is. He is an animal psychologist.
Anyways, let's just put it this way. I'm going to put my final thought on that thing. I would feel very bad for a female dolphin getting plowed by a human male.
Ugh.
I would go, come on, dude. Now,
Just try not to. Just lay off a little bit.
but if I saw a male dolphin humping a beautiful swimmer and both parties were enjoying it, I just don't think I would have the same reaction. This kind of goes back to the debate about the male students having sex with their female teachers versus.
It does.
Yeah.
There's some double standards happening.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also, to be honest, no one's looking at that and thinking like, oh, good for that
Good for them.
dolphin or good for them. Like you start thinking something's happening with that lady, that she wants to have sex with this dolphin. Like
Some mental issues.
yes, it's not healthy to want to have sex with something that's not
Human.
human.
Well, again, is
It's
it?
not healthy.
Yes, your gut says, no, that's wrong. Clearly. Immediately, your gut is just like, no, that's absolutely wrong. But that doesn't mean you can really make an intellectual defense of that position. I bet there's a division between men and women. So I think myself and my guy friends, if we saw a male dolphin, humping a 10 female, I think we would all be like, good for that dolphin.
I wish you would think something's wrong with that person and she needs help. I wish that would be what you would think, but that's okay.
I definitely believe, I'm almost certain of this, there are definitely women who have sexual fantasies about dolphins.
No.
Yes, 100%.
Dax.
Because I watched this show. It was called Fatal Attractions, and it was on the Animal Planet. And it was people who had wild animals who then were attacked by the wild animals.
Right,
And it was
yes.
predominantly women who had these huge, large
Cats.
African savanna cats.
Yeah.
And when they were being interviewed, I was like, there's something more going on than they like cats. There was like
Correct.
they were having
It's a
love affair.
problem.
They were having a love affair.
Yeah, and do you think that's healthy?
Well, clearly not, because they got eaten by these cats.
Exactly.
But-
None of this is all pathological.
But right, but I'm only making the point that there are women sexually attracted to dolphins. They have this
Okay.
weird spiritual connection with dolphins. They have. You know how many women have fucking tattoos of dolphins on their lower back?
Well,
there
I
are
think
no
they
men
think
with
that's sexy or cute or both.
or they are hot for dolphins.
No,
I don't know.
they're not. No, they're not. Look, some people, sure. I'm sure there are some people on this planet who are attracted to dolphins.
Please, if you're in the audience and you have sexual fantasies about a dolphin, please, please, please tell us on social media. And you're not going to want to type "I have sexual feelings for dolphins" because that you could get red flagged or something. So the code word will be dolphin asparagus.
Listen, this is serious, kind of.
Is it?
It is serious. The people with the cats and stuff, those people have a deep-seated nurturing thing that's not getting met, and now they're going into a weird realm, and it's a pathology. And that's not good. They died because of it.
My theory on it is more specific. I think that those people had a crazy, dangerous, dominant parent that they didn't get love from. And if they can tame this wild killing machine, it'll be like getting their parents' love or approval.
It's an option.
That's my theory on those people.
That could be an option. I think mine's an option too. They're both options.
Oh, yeah.
Well, also that desire to nurture something also comes from probably something not good.
It's the ultimate, I'm going to fix this guy.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to make this killing machine lovable.
Love me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not hurt me.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow, yeah. But the dolphin thing, again, they're not eating humans out there. So I think it would be a different thing. I think it could be more purely sexual.
No, it's not. It's the same. It's the most extreme level of wanting something you can't have.
I also think women are attracted to horses. Not all women. I think some
Just
women.
because you like things doesn't mean you're attracted to them sexually.
No, I know. And I think the 99% of women who like horses aren't sexually attracted to horses. But I think some women who spend their whole life in a stable, like riding and all that, I think that gets perverted into some kind
why
of
do
sexual
you think
attraction.
that?
Yeah, well, there's videos of women having sex with horses, and I guess you could say that's probably orchestrated by some weird man.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah,
And I don't think that woman is excited about having to do that.
yeah. Some though. I'm trying to think if I've ever fantasized about having sex with an animal. I don't think so. Yeah, I can say I haven't. I just had to go through.
The giraffe.
I was going to just say, I do think giraffes are pretty.
Okay.
And llamas. They have a
Okay.
pretty face. Like they have like these big eyelashes,
Hmm.
very anthropomorphic faces.
But you don't want to have sex with a giraffe.
No, but
Just
I'm
because
only
you-
saying I've recognized that they're pretty.
Yeah, but again, that's my point.
I've
is-
never looked at a female bear and been like, oh, she's clearly feminine and pretty.
I guess that's what I mean about women and horses. Like they might be like, "Oh, this is a beautiful creature." It doesn't mean they want to have sex with it.
But it's hyper masculine. It's like so muscular. The penis is so large.
I don't consider horses to be super masculine.
You don't.
Mm-mm.
Have you ever, well, clearly you have. You've stood next to like these big ass.
Yeah, I know what a horse looks like.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't
yeah.
know if you'd ever
Thanks
seen one.
for checking. So the movement where girls wore rings from their fathers, I couldn't really find the father thing, but the purity ring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Worn as a sign of chastity. Practice originated in the U.S. in the 1990s as part of the purity movement that gave rise to Christian-affiliated sex abstinence groups. Yeah, wearing a purity ring is typically accompanied by a religious vow to practice abstinence until marriage. Oof. And then they're all having anal sex, is what she was saying.
Uh-huh.
There was a girl in my high school who was with her boyfriend for a really long time, and she was really religious, and we knew they were going to get married, and they were not having sex, and it was a big deal that they were not having sex, and we were talking about it one time in this big group, and she was like, well, I mean, he's put it in.
In
We
her
were
vagina?
like,
Oh, just the tip.
No, I think he just didn't come in there.
Or maybe he just placed it in there and didn't move back and forth. And they're like,
Yeah,
oh,
maybe
this is legit.
not sex.
Yeah.
Because we're just
I've had a similar conversation in my youth where the girl was like, let's not have sex, but just put it in.
what are they?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Talk about mixed messages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to have sex.
you do
Put
it?
it in. Of course.
Probably should just not do it with a person like that. Just in general.
Well, definitely now, if I were in my 20s in 2019, I would say, I'm sorry, I need a little more clarity.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to have sex or not? But back then,
Yeah. She wanted to remain a virgin.
no, it wasn't even about virgin. It was just that we
Oh.
shouldn't have sex.
Oh.
Just put it in. By the way, everyone knows about this. That's why the just the tip conversation in Wedding Crashers was so funny and everyone was laughing so loud because they related. Many people related to just the tip. We're going to try to wait. We're not going to do it. Just put the tip in. That was very common. That's why everyone
Really?
laughs.
I've
That's why it's a
never-
joke that made it onto
Well,
the
it's also
screen.
just funny. I laughed, and just the idea of only putting the tip in is funny.
It is funny, but I would argue that it wouldn't have made it in the movie if 0.01% of the population had some connection to that.
Yeah, maybe. So you said there's a really good Radiolab or This American Life, you couldn't remember, on Facebook and how they discovered the It's Embarrassing thing.
Yeah.
I emailed Ira and asked
Uh-huh.
if it was a This American Life, and he said no.
Oh, okay.
But he said Radiolab did a great Facebook episode about them censoring content and how hard that is. That has nothing to do with this, but just FYI.
I'll check that out.
Yeah. And I couldn't find that. I couldn't find it on Radiolab. Or he said maybe Reply All. I looked. I couldn't find that.
Oh, right. That does seem like could have been
Yeah.
that too.
So I couldn't find it. So
Sorry.
if you find it,
I'll tell everyone.
me.
Yeah.
That's it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I sure love Dr. Alex.
Yeah, me
Oh,
too.
Very smooth and steady.
Yeah, I liked her disposition a lot.
Me too. It was very confident and calm.
Yeah.
Well, I love you.
Love you.
And happy birthday, Wobby Wob.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thanks.
We got to find a male review.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good night.
Good night.